What's up guys, it's me Jeremy and welcome to my guide on how to counter the bot lane duo of Taric Ezreal. I've made a guide for them, so it's only fair that I make a guide on what is essentially how to beat them. Now to counter any matchup you need to understand the strengths and weaknesses of those champions, and then do your best to avoid the strengths and capitalize on the weaknesses. Let's go over their strengths first. The first is that they dish out a ton of damage. Ezreal's Q will deal lots of damage in fights, as it scales very well. Not to mention Taric's armor shred and burst, and that makes for quite a strong fight. Next, they are phenomenal at trading. Ezreal's poke coupled with Taric's sustain can make it easy to be bullied out of the lane by taking damage. Be careful in fights, as Taric's heal will have a drastically reduced cooldown, not to mention his tankiness and armor shred. The last strength I came up with is that Ezreal Taric is a very high utility lane. Ezreal's mobility, along with Taric's amazing CC and his stun, their tankiness, and their sustain, can make for a very hard lane to play against. To avoid their strengths, the first thing you need to do is avoid their poke. Dodging Ezreal's Q in lane is very important. Don't hug the bush too much or he can poke you for free. Staying behind minions is an excellent way to avoid this. Also, the number one way to beat them is to bait out Taric's stun, and then fight or poke immediately after. If you can bait Taric into wasting his stun, that pretty much removes their pressure in the lane entirely for about 10 seconds or so, since they will be very vulnerable. Do your best to bait this out and then capitalize on that mistake. Now let's go over their weaknesses. They both have mana issues, especially Taric if you are trading a lot, because Taric has high mana costs and Ezreal spams his skills. Also, Ezreal is a skill shot champion, so if you can dodge his skills, you will do pretty well. The last weakness I came up with is that Taric's stun has a very long cooldown. I cannot stress this enough, how important it is to make him waste his stuns and then capitalize on that mistake, as it is definitely the best way to beat them. To capitalize on their weaknesses, you need to first dodge Ezreal's skill shots. Using minions or even just your support to block Ezreal's Q and then dodging his ult will make you outdamage him by a ridiculous amount, and you will actually be able to pretty much win any fight if you can pull this off. Just be careful to not get bursted when Taric uses his stun. Next, if you can manage to outlast their mana, you will have a very solid presence, provided you don't let Taric auto attack the minions and you are poking them down. If Taric runs out of mana, you can start poking a lot, as he will be pretty much useless. Note that these tips are valid even if you have a bad matchup in the lane. Overall, just do your best to dodge Ezreal's skills and make Taric waste his stun. Now let's go over some counterplay mechanics and major counterpicks to beat them. Starting off with the counterplay mechanics. Taric's stun can be relatively avoided by mobility spells. For example, you can wait for a Taric to stun you as Corki, and then Valkyrie away. And if you manage to take no damage, then you didn't necessarily bait the stun because now your Valkyrie is on cooldown, but it does remove a little bit of pressure for a while. Just be careful though, because now you are vulnerable too, as your escape spell is on cooldown. If all else fails, be sure to flash before the stun actually stuns you, so it's harder for them to burst you down. Blocking, and this was mentioned earlier, is a very solid tactic against Ezreal. Fight when you have friendly minions, or at the very least have the one who your opponents don't want to focus between the one who they do want to focus, in order to distribute the damage, while you focus and kill one target. Now for the counterpicks. Sivir is godly against this combo. Taric's stuns and Ezreal's mystic shots become mana potions, and with the CC support you can do lots of damage with the boomerang blade and auto attack ricochet auto attack combo. Graves, Corki, and Tristana will also do very well against them because of their mobility to avoid the burst and because of their high damage in fights. Vayne can also do very well if your mechanics are good enough to dodge Ezreal's skills. On Vayne though, I would recommend taking Cleanse. On the support side, unconventional supports are actually very good here. Lux and Zyra outrange Taric's stun and do magic damage, so they can safely poke him while his W is powerless to tank that damage. Alistar will also do well against them because he is as tanky, if not more tanky, depending on the items, and he has more CC than Taric. Leona would do well against them, but it is nearly impossible for Leona to hit her skills onto Ezreal, so she is countered by him. The last pick that can do well against them would be Nunu, as he does a lot of magic damage with his snowball and ultimate, and his buff and debuff can make for a huge presence in fights, as he is tanky enough to withstand the burst from Taric's stun, but then he can kite them around very easily with the snowball and increased movement speed. So, that's it for my guide on how to counter the bot lane duo of Taric Ezreal. Let me know if you have any feedback in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.